Guns are fun! No, they are serious and not toys. But in fantasy settings, guns can add a unique flavor to the world by evoking cowboys and pirates. Gunslingers are a class dedicated to using guns, or, if you want, crossbows. They have medium armor, are experts in firearms and crossbows, and their key attribute is dexterity. Most guns have the uncommon trait, but otherwise they have no special proficiencies or restrictions. So if anyone can use guns, what is the point of a gunslinger? In Pathfinder, characters have proficiencies between untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary. Each one grants a different bonus. Different classes have different proficiencies with weapons. A wizard starts with trained and simple weapons. Rogues are better. They start trained in simple and martial weapons. However, the undisputed weapon masters are fighters. Fighters start as experts in simple and martial weapons. That means at any level, the fighter will probably have a +2 compared to the next best martial character. No other class has the same weapon proficiencies as fighters, with one exception. The Gunslinger starts with expert proficiency in simple and martial firearms and crossbows. That +2 bonus is a big deal. Most firearms have the fatal trait, which is accompanied by a damage die. That means on a critical hit, the weapon damage die is replaced with the fatal die and adds one more of that die to the damage. For example, the Arquebus has fatal D12, so the Arquebus would normally do 1d8 +2, 6.5 average damage on a hit. On a critical hit, the damage is doubled for 2d8 +4. Thanks to fatal, the damage die is upgraded to 2d12 +4, and an additional die is added for a total of 3d12 +4 damage, an average of 23.5. So one critical hit can be worth more than 3 regular hits. That +2 from your gun proficiency is looking pretty good right now. Gunslingers also get a +1 to damage with firearms and crossbows. However, their proficiency comes at a cost. No other weapon proficiency for a gunslinger can ever go higher than the level below your firearm proficiency. So why not just play a fighter with a gun? The gunslinger's gun proficiency interacts very well with the fatal trait on most firearms. You'll find that their other class abilities and feats do the same. For example, most guns and crossbows need to be reloaded, which takes at least one interact action and a free hand. When you make a gunslinger, you pick a fighting style called your Gunslinger's Way. The Gunslinger's Way grants you a special ability called a deed. There are 3 levels of deed. Initial deed you get at level 1, advanced deed at level 9, and greater deed at level 15. The Gunslinger's Way also grants you a Slinger's Reload. A Slinger's Reload is a special reload action which lets you reload and do one other thing as a single action. That other thing depends on the Gunslinger's Way you choose, but it means you don't have to spend one of your precious actions to only reload. There are 4 Gunslinger ways we'll talk about today. The Drifter uses a gun in one hand and a melee weapon in the other hand. They can reload their gun at the same time they make a melee attack. Their initial deed is a free action which lets them interact twice during their initiative roll to draw both their ranged and melee weapons, and can stride towards an enemy they can perceive on their turn, all as a free action. The Pistolero uses a one-handed firearm in one or both hands. They can create a diversion or demoralize at the same time they reload. Remember that if you're dual-wielding pistols, you need a free hand to reload. You need to take a level 1 Gunslinger class feat, Dual Weapon Reload, that gives you the ability to reload while holding a weapon. As their deed, the Pistolero can draw one weapon and gets a +2 bonus to their initiative. They can also step 10 feet as a free action on their first turn. The Sniper usually uses a two-handed weapon and can reload at the same time they take cover or hide. If a sniper rolls stealth for initiative, they can use their initial deed to immediately draw their weapon, and their first strike with that weapon does an additional 1d6 precision damage. The Vanguard uses a two-handed weapon and can reload at the same time they shove with their weapon. When they roll initiative, they can use their initial deed to draw their firearm and gain a +1 circumstance bonus to their AC until their first turn. Another thing you should probably know as a gunslinger is that guns need to be maintained. Every morning you should clean all your firearms. It takes 1 hour to clean them, but you can clean up to 5 simultaneously. If you don't, you must make a DC 5 flat check when you strike to make sure your gun doesn't misfire. If it misfires, you get a critical failure, and you need to spend an interact action to clear the gun, and then another interact action to reload it again. Let's start taking a look at some guns you might be interested in. The Arquebus is a nice two-handed weapon with a long range and decent damage. Like many guns, it's fatal D12 and concussive. Many guns have the concussive trait. Most bullets do piercing damage, however they also have some bludgeoning power to them. While concussive firearms always do piercing damage, they will take the lower of a creature's piercing and bludgeoning resistance. The Arquebus also has the kickback trait, which means it has some serious recoil. It does +1 damage, but gives you a -2 on attack rolls unless you have at least a 2 strength, so having a high enough strength is a must. Dueling pistols are a nice one-handed weapon and have the concealable trait, which gives you a +2 bonus to hide or conceal the weapon on you. The blunderbuss has no fatal trait at all, and a low range, but it has the scattered 10-foot trait. When a blunderbuss hits, all creatures within 10 feet of the target, including the target and possibly your allies and you, take 1 splash damage. If you want to switch between using a weapon one- or two-handed, you could use the GHOULS. The GHOULS is a one-handed weapon but has the fatal aim trait. That means it's fatal but only if wielded with 2 hands. Remember, it takes an action to put your grip on it. If you're still worried about reloading despite your slinger's reload, there are some specific guns you might be interested in. The double-barrel musket has the double-barrel trait, which means it has 2 chambers that can be loaded and fired individually. That means you can shoot twice without having to reload. You can also shoot them both at the same time, upgrading your damage die and fatal damage die by 1. The slide pistol has a poor range but has the capacity trait. That means you can load the pistol with up to 5 rounds, although it will take 5 reload actions. However, once you fire 1 round, you can switch to the next chamber as an interact action without needing a free hand. The slide pistol is expensive, so consider the pepper box to start with. Finally, the repeating crossbow is an advanced weapon, meaning you're not as good with it unless you take the level 6 feat advanced shooter. With 3 actions, a repeating crossbow can be loaded with 5 crossbow bolts. Unlike the capacity trait, the repeating crossbow automatically switches to the next bolt without needing an action. In conclusion, the Gunslingers' novelty is their expertise with firearms and crossbows. Firearms are usually fatal and concussive, so Gunslingers are highly focused on getting critical hits. Firearms also require reloading as an action. Gunslingers can choose a Gunslinger's way that lets them do some other action at the same time as reloading to help their action economy.